Welcome to our presentation on Asian American and Native American Pacific Islanders serving institutions. This presentation is by Will, Sharina, and myself, JT. In this, I just want to give a quick summary and a little background to what we are going to be going over. The PNPI is the Post-Secondary National Policy Institute. This institute helps provide some research to the policymakers in charge in our country that can provide necessary policy changes to improve the quality of our education. The time period of 2007 to 2009 is when this population received the most recognition, and this allocated more funding and increases in that funding. I would like to also point out that the apology law happened in November of 1993. Our government basically apologized to the nation of Hawaii because they were a kingdom on their own, and then we overthrew their government, and in 1993 officially and rightfully so apologized to the nation of Hawaii and the people that reside there. This apology law allowed for an increase in resources to be allocated to the Pacific Islander population. Then we also have, what do these programs do? Overall, they're going to strengthen the support and the resources for this population. There's going to be mentorship, first-year experience programs, advising and academic support, as well as encouraging the schools in themselves to provide more support for the students.
I'm going to share a bit about the roots and history that contributed to the establishment of Asian American and Native American Pacific Islander serving institutions. As has been made very apparent through many of the readings in our class thus far, higher ed in the United States has a long history of restrictions and segregations that directly blocked minority groups from attending universities. Over time, this began to change, but institutions did not just suddenly change their minds about these things. It often took legal action to transform into the universities we are today. Yes, there were changes at the university level, but a significant case I want to highlight is Tape v. Hurley from 1885, which is significant for Asian American students and was kind of the first legal action taken to ensure education for them. In 1984, Mamie Tape, who was a Chinese American born in San Francisco, California, was denied admission to school because of her Chinese descent. Their principal shared that there was a code that barred Chinese children from attending public school, despite the fact that she was actually born in America. The Tapes sued, and in 1985, the Supreme Court ruled in their favor, which was still met from opposition from school officials. In response to this, a separate school was established for Chinese children. This began a wave of what we've referred to as separate but equal education throughout many parts of the United States. A new form of segregation, especially considering that just because this education was provided separately, it was far from equal to the education that white Americans received. Another piece of legislation I want to highlight is the Higher Education Act of 1965, which significantly expanded federal funding for higher education in the U.S. While this act did not seem to directly impact the creation of ANAPESES, many years later, its provisions helped to create a more equitable and accessible higher education system that benefited students from all backgrounds, including Asian American and Pacific Islander students. It, in a general sense, seemed to be a step in the right direction when considering the future of ANAPESE universities. Finally, we now come to the College Cost Reduction Act and Access Act in 2007, which officially designated Asian American and Native American Pacific Islander serving institutions for the first time. In our next slide, we'll provide more information about some of the requirements universities must meet in order to achieve, apply, and receive this designation.
When looking at who this federal grant actually serves and what institutions qualify for this program, we actually have to study the student profile and population. When looking at institutions, 10% of undergraduate populations of the institution must be of API descent. In order to qualify further for this federal grant, 50% of the total student population must receive financial assistance through programs such as federal Pell Grant, work study, or opportunity grants that are governmentally funded.
In this slide, we are going to be discussing how the higher education institution serves the population of Asian American and Native American Pacific Islander students, how this impacts the students as well as the higher education system. According to the U.S. Department of Education, these institutions are best serving their populations by incorporating a more representative curriculum for students in these cultural focuses to allow more understanding for students to gain education, but also to ensure a well rounded and culturally specific direction. It is extremely important for students of Indigenous communities as well as Asian American, Native American, Pacific Islander communities to learn more from their own specific culture when learning the everyday education. If we learn education through cultural lenses, crucially a lens that we can be related to, it is inspiring for students to know that they too can create beneficial work towards an integrated curriculum for their own future. In general, I think it is important for relatability to be present in the curriculum that is being represented for students in academia. It provides a sense of self worth and seeing a prime example of literature and curriculum that has been implemented into a system. Academic services such as tutoring and mentoring resources for those in need of any extra assistance, providing more resources for community outreach. This is a massive aspect to help serve the population as well as increase the likelihood of academia to be more normalized and encouraged in the students' households. Reaching out to a community is going to bring more education to the student experience, and it's a wonderful way to build community bonds, more awareness in a community, and keep traditions and cultural views alive and cultural traditions. The population is being served also through counseling services, financial and academic advising, low income guidance, and guidance for the families through the challenges of higher education journeys. There's there's also funding being allocated to the management acquisitions to create more resources and funding and advocacy for the population being served. Overall, the impact for students and the higher education system, there's always work necessary to increase the success for students and the experience for students. But the Department of Education is funding quite a bit of programs to increase the experience for all of these students. The present status of the institution and current initiatives. So, as Sharina noted, there is that 10% population requirement in order to qualify for the program funding. And once you qualify for that funding, you can receive up to $350,000 per year to the institution to improve the quality of academia for students, to conduct more research on how to better serve the population, and to provide support for the students through those resources that the funding allows for. The present status is more so focused on the 2 and the 4-year institutions based off of those qualifications of the population requirement. Moving forward, more program funding for community colleges and graduate students, as well as current initiatives for online schooling to be more accessible and funded. Those are going to be the goals moving forward, and I personally hope that it stems even further than and into elementary, middle school, high school level to provide more funding for this population to be seen and heard and have more resources to improve the quality of their education.
In an effort to learn more about how student affairs educators can support students in Anapizis, I interviewed Wendy Sasaki, who is the Associate Director of UC San Diego's API Meta Programs and Services, which stands for Asian Pacific Islander Middle Eastern Desi American Program and Services. Not only does Wendy serve as the director, but she also was on the task force that resulted in UC San Diego receiving ANAPC federal designation in 2023. I had asked Wendy to share with me what role she believes that student affairs professionals can play in supporting Asian American and Pacific Islander students, specifically on ANAPC designated campuses. So, first off, it's important to delineate the needs between domestic and international Asian students. It is common that student affairs professionals group together all Asian students, but we must recognize the different needs of Asian American students and international students. Colleges often offer numerous resources and efforts created specifically for the needs of international students, but unfortunately, domestic Asian students do not often share the same exact needs. Unlike many international Asian students, Asian Americans often share identities that are historically underserved in U.S. higher education, such as first gen, low socioeconomic status, and working class families, groups that also have lower retention and graduation rates. This demonstrates the importance of student affairs to recognize the needs of different Asian students and make an effort to provide the appropriate support. The next theme shared by Wendy was a call for student affairs professionals to work beyond the designation. Yes, your university may secure funding by reaching the status, but work must be done to provide support for Asian American and Pacific Islander students, just like other minority groups may already have on your campus. So, like identity specific community centers, programming efforts, academic support, and mentorship opportunities must be implemented. The next thing she pointed out is something that feels to be an effort that cannot be directly impacted by student affairs staff, and that is the importance of an increase in faculty who represent our Asian American and Native American Pacific Islander students. While we likely cannot be the ones to appoint new faculty members, we can make the effort to fill this gap while the university works towards achieving this goal. This goes back to doing the work beyond the designation. What we can do is explore creative ways to find our students mentorship opportunities and connect them with high achieving members with the same identities. And the final point that Wendy shared with me was that it is important to dig deeper into the demographic data of Asian American and Pacific Islander students, especially at Annapeaseys. Depending on the university, it is common that they may need to bunch together different demographic data to meet requirements of receiving the funding. So while this is a helpful maneuver to receive the designation, it is important that student affairs professionals do not take the data at face value. A student may hold multiple identities. Wendy shared the example of at UCSD where Middle Eastern students are considered white within the demographic data. Unpacking this data will help us be more intentional about the offerings we provide for students.
As this is the newest minority serving institution grant, there is still so much research on what can be done to better serve this population and also to serve the different aspects that come along with it. AAPI is just an umbrella term for very many ethnicities and tons of languages that are still unknown or underrepresented in this community. There's still much to learn and how to cater to these students in a consistent and effective manner. And as time goes on, there are obviously plenty of programs and awareness support that is provided to this community and also being developed and created every single year in order to improve enrollment, retention, and graduation rates with the help of a federal grant as so. These are just some examples of institutions that are currently recognized under this federal grant as an ANAPISI institution. And De Anza College and South Seattle College are actually two of the 6 institutions that were first recognized and declared under this federal grant when the application had first opened. University of Hawaii at Hilo is another institution located in Hawaii that is also declared under this grant as well. And these are just some additional highlights that we wanted to shine some light on. It's important to know that this federal grant is also the least funded minority serving institution federal grant designation out of all the MSIs due to it having the lack of awareness to some campuses. That being said, although that the population of AAPI students and qualified institutions are always increasing and meeting qualifications, the numbers of actual funded institutions are not increasing at that same rate. And this could be due to many occasions where institutions are not aware that they are qualified for this federal grant. And some of this can build off of the lack of need awareness due to the model minority stereotype that does not represent the full embodiment of API descent. This model minority stereotype only is targeted towards a certain group of API descent individuals and does not actually represent all the other ethnicities and languages that fall under this umbrella.